The Golden Globe, Chapter 8. Tahiri, there's been a slight change of plans, Anakin whispered to his friend over breakfast. We have to take R2-D2 with us. Tahiri's jaw dropped. I don't understand. Why should we take R2? Tahiri didn't receive an answer. She studied her friend for a moment before she spoke again. Anakin looked exhausted. Ever since he had begun to have her dream, tired purple circles started to appear under his eyes. Tahiri, on the other hand, had slept wonderfully the last few nights. She hadn't had the dream once. Anakin, Tahiri began again. You've got to be kidding. We can't take that droid. He'll ruin everything. We can't even understand him. And if he fell into the river, we'd never be able to get him out, Tahiri added without stopping for a breath. He was in my dream last night, Anakin said softly. That means that we might need him wherever we're going. And we might not need him, Tahiri said with a scowl. I thought we weren't going to follow our dreams without question, she added. Better safe than sorry, Anakin asked his friend. That's true, Tahiri sullenly admitted. Well, how are we going to get him to sneak away with us? Leave that up to me, Anakin said with a little smile. It was hard to concentrate on schoolwork that morning. Both Anakin and Tahiri kept looking at their wrist chronometers. They were excited, nervous, and scared. It seemed like years before class was over. When the other students had filed out of the room, Anakin sauntered over to R2-D2. Hey, R2, want to show me around the rest of the Great Temple during my free time? The droid bleeped several times. I take it that means yes, Anakin muttered. Good. There's just one thing. We need to develop a way to understand each other. Let's start with 1 beep for yes and 2 beeps for no, okay? R2 beeped once. Let's go, buddy, Anakin said with a smile. Anakin and R2 headed away from the group down one of the hallways. Tahiri quickly caught up to them. The three rounded a corner, and Anakin checked to make sure no one was behind them. Once he was sure they were alone, he and Tahiri began to race down the hallway. R2 whistled in surprise, then scooted to follow them. Anakin knew that his Uncle Luke had probably asked the droid to keep an eye on him. He'd banked on R2's following him once he and Tahiri started running. Tahiri's bare feet slapped on the stone floor as they tore down the stairs that led to the hangar bay. She didn't see Anakin stopped in front of her until she'd crashed into his back. He didn't have to warn her to be quiet. She immediately spotted Luke Skywalker and Tian. They were walking down a hallway on a lower level. A door opened to their left, and the 2 Jedi disappeared inside. Anakin and Tahiri both sighed in relief and then began to run again. By the time they reached the hangar, both were out of breath, and R2 had stopped beeping. Anakin and Tahiri opened a large wooden door and slid into darkness. R2 followed behind them. They began running their hands along the stone walls, seeking the exit door. I can't find it, Tahiri said in a desperate voice. Then a thought struck her. Anakin, the lower level of the temple is partially underground. How can there be a door? Tahiri cried. There has to be some kind of exit to the jungle, Anakin whispered in the darkness. The voice said so. We must be doing something wrong. Anakin dropped to his knees and began searching the floor of the storage room. There was a chance that they were looking for the door in the wrong place. His fingers ran along the smooth surface. All of a sudden, his left thumb caught on something. It was a thick crack. He traced the crack with his fingers. It was in the shape of a large square. Tahiri, I think I've found it, he called. Tahiri ran over to Anakin and saw the outline of a trapdoor on the floor beneath her. How do we open it? She asked. R2 began to beep beep. Quiet, you silly droid, Tahiri whispered angrily. R2 kept double beeping. He's saying no, Anakin said under his breath. Anakin looked up and saw the droid standing by a large wooden handle in the wall. You're trying to tell us that we're doing this all wrong, aren't you? Anakin whispered to the droid. Give it a try your way, R2, he said. The droid reached up and pulled down the handle with his metal arm. Instantly, the doorway in the floor opened. Anakin looked down. A narrow passage of stone blocks led away from the trap door. This must be the way, Anakin said, as he slid into the passage. Come on, you two, he called from the darkness. You first, Tahiri said to the droid. R2 beeped once and moved forward to the trap door. He tipped slightly backward, then rolled into the passageway and out of sight. My turn, Tahiri whispered. Then she, too, dropped out of sight. A few minutes later, hot, moist air hit the three as they entered the jungles of Yavin 4. Follow me, Anakin called as he raced toward the river. R2 beeped several times. I think he knows where he's going, buddy, Tahiri said to the droid. They began to follow Anakin. Tahiri had to stop a few times to help R2, who kept getting tangled in the blue leaf shrubs. Anakin was already by the long silver raft when Tahiri and R2 got to the edge of the river. "Told you the raft would be here," he said with a shy smile. Tahiri hopped in, and they lifted R2 over the rounded sides of the raft, then pushed it off from the bank. Anakin jumped in at the last second. "Well, at least we're not rafting in a storm like we do in the dream," Anakin said as he began to paddle. Tahiri sat in the front of the raft, staring down at the water. "This place is amazing," she thought. Enormous Masassy trees hung down over the river, their branches arching. The sunlight danced off the clear green water. The only thing that keeps this afternoon from being perfect is R2, Tahiri thought. Since they had begun rafting, he hadn't stopped whistling and beeping. "Can't you make him be quiet?" Tahiri asked Anakin. "He must have something on his mind, because he hasn't stopped whistling for 10 minutes, Anakin replied. "I wish I'd had more time to figure out a way to understand him." Tahiri turned back to face the droid. She was going to make R2 be quiet, even if she had to disconnect his speaker. But when Tahiri turned around, she couldn't say a word. She was too shocked by what she saw. Anakin, I think we might have a problem," Tahiri finally managed to say. "What's that?" Anakin asked as he paddled. "I think R2 has been trying to tell us to look behind the raft," Tahiri replied. Anakin turned quickly. The sky of Yavin 4 had become black. Large purple storm clouds rolled across it. In a flash, the sun was covered, and Yavin 4 grew cold and dark. The wind rose, tearing over the river. "What's going on?" Tahiri yelled to Anakin above the roar of the wind. "I'm not sure, but I think this might be one of the terrible storms Uncle Luke told me about when I got to Yavin 4. He said that every few months strong winds and rains tear across the moon," Anakin told Tahiri. He didn't tell her that his uncle had also said that perhaps the only safe place to be during the storms was the Great Temple. Tahiri's sea-green eyes grew dark, just like the water of the river. She saw the waves begin to form. "This is going to be just like my dream," she said in dread. "Only this time I might really drown." "Don't think that way, Tahiri," Anakin commanded. "Just hang on. I'll try to paddle us to land." Tahiri gripped the side of the raft. The water was now crashing over them in giant waves. The raft tipped dangerously to one side. Tahiri's blonde hair whipped around her face. For a moment she couldn't see. R2 beeped loudly behind her. Then a gigantic wave hit her, and she toppled backward. She couldn't see anything as she tumbled. Then she was in the water. It was bitterly cold. Every time she tried to gasp for breath, another wave struck her. Tahiri felt herself beginning to drown. "Help me, Anakin," she screamed in her mind. But all she could see was water, and all she could hear were her own cries.